Welcome back. I'm Britt.
I'm Tori.
I'm Tia.
She wasn't who she was. Tia's like, who am I?
I started to go and I was like, wait, that's not the right order.
I wasn't paying attention. I mean, I was paying attention, but I wasn't because Britt said her thing and then Tia leaned forward, so I was like,
and I felt
I'm good.
Britt, Tia, that sounds weird. Anyway, welcome back. When we were last talking, we briefly mentioned same-sex marriage, so we're just going to circle back on that, just because there's so much history that we can talk about with the LGBT community and with General Pride Month as it relates to same-sex marriage. So, same-sex marriage is fairly recent, which all the time is wild to think about. It was ruled in the case of Obergefell v. Hodges, which was like a reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment to say that same-sex marriages would be federally recognized and recognized in all states. But before that, there were civil unions between same-sex couples, but that didn't carry the same legal rights as marriage does. So when you're married to somebody, you have different rights regarding like healthcare and being with the person if they're hospitalized, all these little tiny things that are big things. But and the reason why this is such a big deal is because of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s. So this was tragic, is kind of like the only way to really talk about it. But basically, groups of gay men primarily dying from this disease, and it gets overlooked because it's seen as a gay person's disease, and it's also people who do work in sex work, they're getting it. So society generally rules it as like, it's getting rid of people that we don't like, we don't care about, whatever. So it's not that big of a deal. And as a result, so like an entire generation of gay men just about dead. And this became a big issue and tragedy within the community and within these networks because same-sex couples couldn't be together in the hospital. They couldn't benefit or do anything with like health insurance or with money or in any way that a married couple could help each other in a healthcare negative situation. They weren't able to do that for each other, and it ended up with so many gay men and this isn't to say that AIDS was just a gay man's disease, but they were the main victims of it for a time. And because of that, there was just so many unnecessary deaths and tragedies. So when we think about Stonewall and Pride and same-sex marriage, I feel like especially today, it's kind of understood and in a sense taken for granted. I've seen that younger people kind of like don't realize just how recently same-sex marriage has been legalized and the weight that it carries, just because there's such a tragic history behind it that you can't separate from it. And I'm sorry to get all like sad and, you know, all of that when we were talking about like Pride and Stonewall, because Pride is a great thing. And there is plenty of this idea of like joy is resistance and all of that. But there is this, I keep saying this word, but it's the only word that can say it. Like there is this tragedy connected to the history that it's hard to overlook. But in a sense, that kind of makes Pride more beautiful because we're able to still have these great things and like an amazing community, amazing support, like all of this happiness and solidarity despite all of the pain and the tragedy and the heartbreak.
Yeah, I think that I think that that's a great way to explain it. I think that while Pride is this time to rejoice and to celebrate all the fighting and all the fight that it took us to get here, there's also so much more that we still need to do. There's still so much of it, like there's still so many people in the community which are still afraid and are, you know, in unsafe spaces, and that, I mean, the way that our government officials still talk about people, the way that the religious community, and I'm using religious community, even government, like as an umbrella, because there are people within both of those camps which really are supportive of Pride, but there's a lot of people within that have a lot of power that are damaging and hurtful and are perpetuating harm in different ways. So while we've come so far, there's still a lot of a fight that we have to go.
And I feel like that's why it's so important to kind of explore the history behind certain historical events that are traditionally celebrated or celebrations, because you don't know, like if you don't know where it came from, you're missing this like crucial information that really does paint it in a, not only in a different light, but makes it that much more important, that much more of a reason to celebrate, because you went through all this strife for such a long time, all these hard fought battles, and legally and otherwise, and then you get to this kind of place where we are now, where things are kind of starting to change, at least significantly more than they have in the past few decades. So I think having that context is incredibly important as well.
And I love, and like, I don't know, maybe this is in a way bad, but like I love that Pride started with like a fight.
Yes.
Like with sharp teeth. Like it was like no.
Yeah.
Like we're
not going to accept
we're not doing this no more.
Pride
is done.
Pride didn't start as a parade, it started as resistance.
Yeah.
And especially when you look at the general LGBT community and the ways in which different iterations of that community fought for or tried to fight for rights. Like you see groups trying to align with the heteronormative society and being like, oh, well, we're just like you. Like, we're not weird, we're not freaks. And then seeing like the advancements that got them and what that didn't get them. And then you see this actual, no, you're coming for us. We're not gonna let you do that. This is our space. This is our community. You don't hurt our own without getting hurt back.
Yeah.
And it's good. I like it. I also like it.
I feel like another advantage to all these things coming to light about Pride and just like the history of it is it opens up an entirely new chapter in history and like a bunch of new avenues to kind of explore it within history, like looking specifically at like Emily Dickinson, right? Because I know Britt just visited.
Yes, and I want to do a shout out to the person who I think my tour guide's name, it was Christopher Fiober. I'm so sorry, but what a fantastic it was such a special experience. Like after watching the Apple TV show, which just the importance of sometimes, even though I know it's not historically accurate, the essence and the spirit that I was able, like, that show has spread, it meant so much to me as a writer. So driving 7 hours and getting such a fantastic tour guide on top of being in such a special space, thank you so much. and you'll probably be hearing from me because I'm working on a blog from that visit. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, so the reason I brought that up is because there's so much controversy with Emily Dickinson as a human being and how, like, some people say she had a very close friendship with this other woman, whereas in all likelihood, they were probably lovers. Right? Am I right?
Susan Gilbert, her sister-in-law.
I'm sorry, I'm not really.
No, they were
Dickinson.
I'm here to fill in the. I'm reading like a 700-page biography of her, so I'm like, I'm there, man.
Yeah, and Tia and I were talking about it recently when we decided to do this episode and how we were going to do it, talking about different historical figures that are now being assigned as being, oh, this person was probably at least bisexual, or maybe they were gay but couldn't be gay because of the time period and things like that. So I think opening that chapter in history is fascinating, and it gives a lot of people not only hope, but also I think a new reason to love history.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's not just looking at the queer history, but also looking at history through a queer lens and seeing how that changes things. Like, I know that you and I were working on some general history of women, and there was a little close relationship between these two women. Now, immediately I'm thinking, like, neither of you are married. You're both traveling together. You're living together. You're very close friends.
They're just roommates.
They're best friends.
And they were roommates.
They're
and they were
besties.
gal pals. But who knows?
Who's to say?